Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well. I had two options today, and that was either to do a video sort of not too long and just discuss something about the IDAHO 4 case, or to do a 2, maybe 3 hour live that just really takes the piss out of people on the platform, you know, be generally nasty and makes stupid comments and, you know, just attacks people. But then I thought, you know, no, I think that's covered elsewhere. So anyway, let's get straight into the meat and potatoes and do some proper content, shall we? I'll get some laughs. So, the IDAHO 4 case, and the Goncalves family in particular. Look, the gag order, to me, focuses heavily on the Goncalves family. And some people will think that's unfair. Some people think it's fair. Some people will think, look, at the end of the day, Steve Goncalves specifically has been known to maybe say a little bit too much. He's made comments about law enforcement. He's made comments about the case and his feelings towards how it's been handled. And perhaps they just feel that he's a loose cannon and he could indeed put the case at risk. And they just want to go to court and have this dealt with as little hiccups as possible. And that's a potential hiccup. Other people will think, look, this has taken away a person's right to speak their mind, you know, freedom of speech. And there's a fine line there. But when is it too far? When's trying to stop someone from talking too far? And I think when it is involving the death of their child, that is perhaps too far. Unless there is information that they could indeed say that could ultimately affect the outcome of the trial, and they're worried about it. So I think to myself, you know, if they absolutely know that the Goncalves family have evidence or information that could affect it, then that is grounds to say, look, you can't say anything. You cannot say anything. But unless they know that, and they have proof of that, I don't see how they can tell them to not say anything. Because at the end of the day, them saying things or speculating is no different than the countless people like myself who come onto this platform and speculate. Could it hold more weight because as family members? That could be argued. But ultimately, if we're talking about a fair trial, I think that ship has well and truly sailed. I personally don't think that Bryan Kohberger could go in any state in the United States and get a fair trial. And that's just my opinion. Now, could that impact the trial ultimately? Could the defense actually use that as a weapon in their favor to say this guy is just not going to be able to get a fair trial? It's just not going to happen. That's to be seen later on down the line. But let's reel it in a little bit and talk about, again, Steve Goncalves and the gag order. So I think to myself, that would be the only grounds where you could genuinely, with some degree of being right, to tell someone they can't speak. So I think to myself, okay, what does he know? And it led me to look back and think, what has the guy said and what statements has he made? And he made one in particular, and some of you may remember, some of you may not. And it was when he referenced that the person who did this didn't even have to go upstairs. And I thought to myself, what did he mean by that? What did he mean by he didn't even have to go upstairs? And I thought to myself, well, does that mean that he considered, or did he know, that the person who was originally targeted was not upstairs? And I think that's incredibly important because we look back at how law enforcement, at first of all, they said this was targeted. Then they turned around and said it wasn't targeted, that the house was targeted. But this bit of information surrounding who was actually a target or not has almost been something that they've skipped around and they haven't wanted to grab hold of and say, look, this was the person who was targeted this. And I think that ties back into motive. Because if you can say who specifically the target was, then that almost ties hand in hand with what the motive was. And I feel that when we know that there's 900 plus pages of Exhibit A, and they obviously know a lot more information than they're letting out, I'm wondering whether there are indeed clues out there. Now, the fact that Xana Kanoodle's mum, Cara, now she was arrested not long after this situation. We know that she has had connections with drug trafficking, etc., etc. And I know this is stony ground to walk on and some people don't like it. But we know that Brian Kohberger has had a checkered history himself with narcotics. We know Xana's mum has had a checkered history with narcotics. So there is a link there. There is something that ties them two together. We now have Steve Goncalves, who is saying that they didn't have to go upstairs, which makes almost like a reference to the fact that he was there and downstairs was the only place he needed to be. So something made him go upstairs. Now, is it that the people in that house heard the commotion downstairs? Is that what happened? Is Dylan not the only one who came out and saw Brian, but did in fact all three of the other people who was in that house that night came out and confront Brian? Who knows? And was this a fact that, and again, I say Brian as a bit of a verbal typo there, because at the moment Brian is indeed innocent until proven guilty, although there's a lot of people who see otherwise. You know, is he involved 100% in my eyes? But that doesn't mean he is. But in my eyes, I feel that he is. Has he done it on his own without help from anyone? That's the bit I struggle with. I struggle to think that one guy with absolutely no help, no nothing, managed to do this crime in the time frame that he did it. If that is the case, then in my eyes, not his first time. But look, all I'm trying to get at, and this is all speculation, by the way, but I just think, why would law enforcement really want to keep the lid on a family, as if to say, look, you lot need to shut up? And that's basically the polite way, isn't it? You lot need to shut up, keep your mouth shut, and not say a fucking word. And for them to say that and take that stance, to me, they know something. Law enforcement know they know it, and they know that it could potentially be damaging. Could be wrong, could be completely wrong, and if I am, I'm sure the Lyra will tell me. Catch you all in the next one.